Good afternoon. Welcome. I am so excited about our 250th American celebration of independence. And actually, we are going to talk today about liberty and the concept and where it came from. We always hear sweet land of liberty. It's in our national songs. It is on the Liberty Bell. We're going to find out. Where did this dream, this freedom come from? Because nothing is born in a vacuum. We know that 250 years is a long time. And yet, in history, for nations, it is not that long. And because we have a relatively short history, we should know our basic tenets. And sadly, I don't think many of us really think a lot about our history. I know that I have studied it and I love it, but then I forget. And we take this sweet land of liberty for granted. It's easy because we live here. But it was born from many, many years of dreams, hopes, foundational, objective truth, biblical foundation, from a Judeo-Christian worldview to today. And that is why I want to welcome you. I thought, what can I do for my country? I've written many poems, many songs I sing, but many people will not read poems. And I could write a pamphlet, a book, a tract, like the Founding Fathers era. Everyone wrote a tract, and perhaps I will do that. But in today's world, we have this immediate ability to get a message out, verbally and with picture. And so I thought I'm going to make a series of short videos of my beloved America and one person's perspective upon our country. And I encourage you to do whatever you can creatively. If you're an artist, paint a picture. If you're a sculptor, make something beautiful. If you are a baker, I know that there's a fair near me that in August is going to have an apple pie competition in celebration of our country. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that a grand idea? Well, I am going to title this little talk, Safe Haven. And it is interesting, I thought we have to have tea. America, the Declaration, was founded on a tea party. Remember the Boston Tea Party? Well, I brought today a tea set, and this is providential. Because I thought, what do I bring for my very first American presentation? And I went to my china closet and I thought, I love the brown. It's called transferware. Many of you have seen the brown, then they have the blue, they have the red, and it seems that we're transferred onto China over the last couple hundred years. Well, I thought this pot is so beautiful. And I pulled it out, and it's Staffordshire, England, made, but many of the things were made for the colonies or for America. I have a lot of Americana china that was made in England. Well, this particular teapot says on the bottom, Safe Haven. Isn't that beautiful? So I'm calling this lecture Safe Haven. And then as I was preparing, and I was restudying William Penn, whose colony, Pennsylvania, was responsible for the Liberty Bell being made in England and brought to us as a gift. He called his colony Safe Haven. He wanted it to be a place of safety for everyone to come in freedom, to be able to worship God, to be able to have a democratic society, to be able to have a say in the government. So I'm going to pour a cup of tea, and this is so fascinating because I did not know he called Pennsylvania Safe Haven. Here is another cup and saucer with the sea view, with the boats, and it's a haven. Safe haven is a sea term. And it's so appropriate because how was our land founded? By boats. First of all, Christopher Columbus, 1492. Whoa, this is a little full. And by the way, this little picture matches, and it also says Safe Haven. So lovely. Well, Christopher Columbus came with his boats and his men, 1492, and then we had the Pilgrims coming, yes, in 1619, 1620. And they didn't get here by land. They didn't get here by plane. They got here by boat. And it was an arduous journey. We will talk about that on another one of these sessions, but today I want to talk about William Penn. I want to talk about his significance and the Liberty Bell and Pennsylvania. The tea is fabulous. It must have been very hard. Those Americans really showed how truly the colonial Americans serious they were about freedom, liberty. They dumped the tea in the harbor, in the Boston Harbor. That represented such a pleasurable drink to them. They were also hardworking. They needed the tea, but they were being taxed. And so they had to do something dramatic to show the king that they were serious, right? But let's back up, and I want to go back to 1701 when William Penn came to America. And do you know how he got here? It was Charles II was on the throne of England. And if you remember, there was Charles I who lost his head, and then Oliver Cromwell became the Lord Protector, remember? And there was a period of time when they didn't have a king. Well, then Oliver Cromwell died, and his son could not handle, wasn't good at governing, and so it was called the restoration of the monarchy, and Charles II came onto the throne. Now, he had known Charles I had lost his head, and there was deep bitterness and deep anger against anyone that wasn't following. It really was over the strong war and debate over who was going to rule, and the Protestants did not want the severe hand. Charles I was too strong, and he would not give them their freedom. That's in a nutshell. I will go over that later on another talk, but Charles II, somehow William Penn, who had become a Quaker, and that was called a nonconformist religion. It means it wasn't a part of the Anglican Church, wasn't a part of the Catholic Church. They were very loving, gentle, kind people. They didn't believe in war. They were very righteous, honest, and somehow William Penn's father had been close to Charles II and had helped him in a big way. And so Charles II owed Mr. Penn Sr., he owed him something. And so he asked that his son be given land in the New World, in the new colonies, because these Quakers were suffering so much under persecution. They wanted to leave England and go for their freedom of religion. That's how Pennsylvania was started. And it was a huge landmass. And Penn, of course, stands for William Penn. Sylvania stands for trees. There were so many trees, so it was Pennsylvania. Well, then William Penn was a beautiful soul. Everyone loved William Penn. And he said, for our capital city, we want to call it Philadelphia. And that was because he went to the Bible, and in the book of Revelation, and the 7 churches, the Church of Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love. And he said, we want to have brotherly love. So that was the foundation of Pennsylvania. Well, then William Penn, he drew up a charter of privilege. And it was very ahead of its time, because he had, and to back up, he was born in 1681. So when he comes and does this charter of privilege is 1701, okay? So that makes him about in his 20s. He's a young man. And so what William Penn did, this charter that he grew, he said, number 1, we want religious freedom. Number 1, political rights for all, and a democratic system of government. And so that's what he had in his charter. Well, it was very successful. And when William Penn had come, it was called, I said, Penn's Woods, but then William Penn said, I want to call it also Safe Harbor. So that was the root behind this beautiful story of the Liberty Bell, because then in 1751, now William Penn had died, but it was 50 years since that charter of privilege, and they wanted to have a jubilee. In the Bible, in the Old Testament, every 50 years is a jubilee, and it's a celebration of liberty and freedom. Really, it's a restoration of the land. If you had lost your home or land to someone, they had to give it back. And so it's a real special, significant celebration. And so they asked if England could make them a Liberty Bell. So they commissioned the Liberty Bell, and it came on a ship. And it came in 1702. But it was so heavy. When it came, it had a huge crack on the rim. And so the men in the town melted it down and reformed it. And then it was approximately 6 feet tall and 3,200 pounds, massive, filled with all this metal work. Well, when they got this, they thought, what do we put on the Liberty Bell? Okay, there it comes. And they decided to inscribe the scripture verse from Leviticus 25:10, proclaim liberty throughout the land unto the inhabitants thereof. And that's how it got the name the Liberty Bell. This is part of our roots. This is our true biblical Christianity. Our God offers liberty, freedom on a personal level and on a national level, on a family level. Freedom. Everyone wants freedom. it's so interesting. We're in the World Cup, and all of these countries that have come over that had never, these soccer players never had been to America, they're so taken with it. They say it's so free here. Everyone's so happy here. There's so much food here. Everything is so big. The men from Holland were saying, everything is so big. He had driven, I guess, from Kansas to Michigan, and he said, I've never seen such a big place. It's God's land, America, our home. And I wanted to also add that there was Francis Hopkins was one of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. And he was the most amazing man. He was put in charge of designing the money and deciding the coinage. Big job. What the paper money and the coins would look like. And he said, yes, we will put a picture of our great men, like we have George Washington, of course, on the quarter, Abraham Lincoln on the penny. But he said, on every coin, on every dollar, on every paper money, I want the word liberty. There it is, liberty, freedom. And take out your coins and dollars today and look, it'll touch your heart. That it's on there. And also, what else is on all of our coins? In God we trust. Is that beautiful? In God we trust. I love it. What profound words of comfort. Take those words personally. We have hope, we have joy, we have love because we trust in God. The other thing that is interesting, when Abraham Lincoln came, well, one other point. The bell was rung then in 1846 for George Washington's birthday, but it cracked again. It was it had been rung so many times, and so they haven't formally rung the bell since then. However, when Abraham Lincoln died, for part of his going through the country, he was laid at the Liberty Bell, and it is said that over 140,000 visitors came to see Lincoln, and the line that went back was never less than 3 miles. Now this is just a little tiny bit of the history of this fabulous, fabulous treasure we have in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the Liberty Bell is still there. It really wasn't made for America formally, or the Declaration. It was made to celebrate the 50 years after William Penn's, his privileges that he had designed. And it shows how important Philadelphia was as a colony to all of the rest of the 13 colonies. And Philadelphia became such a center of the law and the everything. We can't go into all of that now. But take these little nuggets and you can study on your own and keep going with it, because it's a treasure trove to know. It's our identity. It's who we are. When you're a family, you like to look back at your ancestry. You like to look back at pictures of who you came from. Well, this is our national ancestry. This is our country and where we came from. It's our identity. It makes us strong to know who we are. I have also been so moved watching the World Cup at each nation, how they sing their national anthem with all their hearts. It's so beautiful to me. And I love that each country individually is honored and honors their national anthem. And it gives such a unique, it's like a colorful beautiful tapestry of nations and people, all God's children. And yet God allowed you and me to be born in America, in this incredible country. And people call it the American dream. We don't really know. We haven't even begun to tap into what our individual potential is in this country. I feel like I'm just watching and talking about the tip of the iceberg. Because to get perspective, we have to look back through history. And that's what I want to do on my little talks on my country. I love history, and many of you have been a part of my His story, which is church history from Christ to today. And America fits right in that tree that I use as a visual example of the periods. I always say, there is without the Reformation and the Bible and the printing press and the translation into English and into German, into French, into Dutch, and the literacy that came out of that, there could never have been in America. And just as a little note, we have the Martin Luther nailing those 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Church in 1515. 100 years later, we have in 1620 a group coming across an uncharted ocean, educated, Oxford-educated people bringing their wives and children, not knowing where they're going, with their Geneva Bibles under their arms and a Fox's Book of Martyrs. And they are going, and a Pilgrim's Progress, and they're going to find that land where they can worship God in freedom with all their hearts, minds, souls, and strength. Thank you so much for joining me. This is number 1. I'm calling the Liberty Bell, and I'm going to come to you again during this next week, and I'm going to give little vignettes on who we are and just little pictures from my perspective of my beautiful country called America. Thank you so much for joining me, and please subscribe to this channel and you will be notified. Thank you so much, and God bless.